Welcome to a special edition of the SprintCarLimited.com podcast presented by Wicked Brands. We're doing it Australian style again. We have Sheldon Hart with us. I'm on the beach in Ormond Beach in Florida for the Dirt Car Nationals. And Sheldon, you're in your place over in Australia. So we're opposite ends of the world here.
Yeah, it's currently about 1:45 in the morning, so we're doing all right. We're on the coffee.
Well, I talked to before we get into the Australian Championship. I talked to James McFadden last night. Always a pleasure to talk to James. We put a story on. Yep, he is. He's really, I think, become pretty proficient at the Dirt Car Nationals at Volusia. It's a half mile. I know you guys don't have that, but he talked about how weird it's a half mile and he's doing well. He's also won at Williams Grove. So I think we're to the point now where James McFadden can have success everywhere.
Yeah, I think so. We have no half miles, nowhere, nothing even close to that big down here. So to do well on for an Australian to do well on a half mile like that, it's pretty impressive.
Is he now obviously he's a high profile driver in Australia. Now that he's running with the World of Outlaws, is he even a bigger star when he comes home?
Yeah. He's probably like what Brooke Tatnall was back in the 2000s when I was growing up. Brooke Tatnall was a massive household name back in those days. James McFadden and Kerry Madsen, they're about, the biggest names we sort of have out of Australia for sure, and Ian Madsen as well. They'll chuck him in as well.
Well, we're going to shift gears to the Australian Championship, and first off, they had to prelude the other night. What happened there?
Well, a lot of big news come out of that. A lot of notable names actually found themselves stuck in the B main for that. So what the prelude is a lot of the drivers that are visiting from the eastern states, because it's getting held in Western Australia, where I am, of course, it's getting held at the Perth Motorplex. A lot of the eastern staters that probably, they don't get to come across here very often, maybe once a year at the most. Some of them have never even seen the track, so they contacted Gavin Migro, who's the promoter and the general manager at the Perth Motorplex, and said, hey, we would like a night where we can sort of have a bit of a shakedown and, see what the track's all about. So they ended up having a prelude to the championship on Wednesday night, and it was a bit of an eye-opener because a lot of the people that you would have thought would be, right at the front for the event went nowhere. the names stuck in the B mains astonished me, to be honest.
Who are some of those guys that you expected to be up front who were in the B main and struggled?
Ian Madsen found himself in the B main. Stephen Lyons found himself in the B main. Let me just get the list up here. Just give me 1 second. Internet, one of those things. Here we go. So we had Marcus Dumsney, the reigning Australian champion, was in the B main. Had Dane Kingshot, who drives for Cricky Motorsport, he was in the B main. As I said, Ian Madsen was in the B main. There was, yeah, it was a big shock, especially for a few of the locals as well, that I really thought would be a bit of a hot shot coming into this weekend as well.
So now we move on to the Australian Championship. And first off, going into it, who's sitting atop the points? Who's close to him? Who can win this thing?
Well, so the Australian Championship, it's a standalone event. It's not really a points thing.
Okay.
You got Friday night, which is preliminaries, which is heats, and then preliminary A mains, and then the points from that sort of set the grids for Saturday, really. But Kerry Madsen in the other Cricket Motorsport car, well, he won the A main, so you'd think he's definitely in for a shot. He was pretty impressive. Jamie Veal led probably up until about 5 laps to go. And then the engine started to lay over a bit from what I've heard in the pits. And he sort of dropped off the pace. But before that point, he was sort of the dominant driver of the night. So I would say that he's definitely a strong candidate. But to be realistic, there's 53 drivers for this weekend, which I know in comparison to the Classic, maybe that's not so much. But um, you got to factor in Australia, we don't have the population that the United States do. We've got massive distances between our major cities, and it's about 2 or 3 thousand kilometers between Sydney and Perth. And the majority of the cars are in Sydney. We've got about 25 local cars, I'd say. So to get 53 cars for an Australian championship over here is pretty impressive. But yeah, about half of those that are nominated are in for a pretty realistic shot, I would say. It's probably one of the most wide open Australian championships we've had in a long time.
Well, after the Classic and Brock Hallett getting the win, I think that proves to me everything's open up. Everybody's open. I mean, anybody can win over there. Nothing against him, but it wasn't a guy we talked about as being a favorite. And yet you called that when you said, don't sleep on this guy. So is Brock Hallett the favorite going into this weekend?
Well, even considering that he won the Classic, I wouldn't say that he is the favorite. But the thing is, if you're going to pick a winner for this event, you're a brave man. But I would say, Veal and Madsen are definitely sitting firm favorites. But yeah, to me, like I wouldn't sleep on Howard again. But there's even a couple of local guys in the field that I think, if everything goes right, they could upset. They could pull off an upset, on their home turf. Well, I would say one of those guys I would usually say would be Callum Williamson, but he had an absolute shocker of a wreck on Wednesday night, and I'm glad to see that he walked away from that. Had contact with another car and flipped about 6 or 7 times wildly into the first corner and just absolutely destroyed the car. Fuel tank went flying, everything else just absolutely destroyed the car. So they're doing a massive rebuild, and he got medical clearance this morning. I saw on Facebook, and he's one of our top drivers down here. He's won the local series, he's the defending champion of that. And a season or so ago, he was really dominant, but he found himself qualified 24th for the A main last night. So he just locked in from the B main. But another couple of the locals, I would definitely say, don't sleep on. James Inglis, who's driving for the Diamond Bay Motorsport. That's the same team that Corey Eliason drove for during the speed weeks. He's definitely a top local WA driver. And Jason Kendrick, I can't sleep on him either. He's a multi-time state champion. He's won the Toyota Series multiple times as well, and he finished on the podium last night. So I certainly can't sleep on him either. But there's a good about 5 or 6 locals that I think are in for a realistic shot to win the Australian Championship as well, and that would be a huge thing because the Western Australian hasn't won the Australian Championship since 1993 when Ron Cricky did it.
Oh my! So it hasn't been good for the locals.
No, it hasn't been good for Western Australians for a long time, and I suppose I should explain that the Australian Championship it rotates between tracks and states each year. So, WA might have it one year, then it might be held at a venue in New South Wales another year, then Queensland, Victoria, and et cetera, et cetera. So we haven't had an Australian Championship in Western Australia since 2015, I think, Bunbury. So it's a long time between drinks.
Well, so how much does this event pay to the winner?
So as far as I know, it's paying 10 grand to the winner, but you got to understand it's not about the money. This event isn't about the money. It's about prestige. It's been going for 60 years. And to have your name on that trophy means you're the best driver in Australia for that year. No, you were the top Australian driver for that year. Americans aren't allowed to participate in it. New Zealanders aren't allowed to participate. It's just strictly for Australians. Um, but the names that have been Australian champion, you know, to be on that list, you're in esteemed company. People like Max Dumsney won it on multiple occasions. The winningest driver in the Australian Championship, Gary Rush, won it on 10 occasions.
Wow.
You know, that's probably a name that most Americans don't know, but definitely should learn about that guy. Most prolific. He's the Steve Kinser of Australian sprint car racing. That is the best way I can describe it. So if you want to Google who Gary Rush is, go ahead and do that. But people like Gary Brazier, Brooke Tatnell, Jamie Veal's won it on multiple occasions. Kerry Madsen's won it 4 times, I think. Skip Jackson, that's another name.
Yep, I remember Skip.
Yep. So, so if you've won an Australian championship, you're a top driver for sure.
Well, we're going to wrap this up, but before we go, we're going to make our picks because why not? And I'm going to let you pick first since you're our guest. You pick who you think's going to win the Australian championship this year.
Well, being in the Western Australian, I sincerely hope as a local. As I said, I should say, Western Australians, we've only had 2 national champions, and that would be Noel Bradford, who won it back in 1970 something. I think it was 1976. He won that in Tasmania, and as I said, Ron Cricky, who won that on 2 occasions. But realistically, I'm having a hard time going past Kerry Madsen after his performance, and Veal could very easily win it too. But as I said, easy 20 guys could win that, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone that you've never heard of that's won it come Saturday night. That's for sure.
Well, you're kind of hedging a little bit, but I'm taking Kerry Madsen in a slam dunk to win this thing. I think Kerry, I think he's going to have a good year over in the States. He's going to run for Guy Forbrook. I think I can't wait to see that combination in the Midwest. And I think he's going to prep for that by winning the Australian Championship. And I think he beats, I'm even going to give you your podium. How do you like that? I'm going to say it's going to be Kerry Madsen, Jamie Veal, and I'm going to say Steve Lyons bounces back and finishes 3rd.
Well, usually I would say Steve Lyons would be a shoe-in for the podium, but I realistically don't think he's got it in him this year. But that's just being honest. I just don't think he's going to be able to fight for that. But when I'm thinking about the podium, I'm thinking Kerry, I'm thinking Jamie Veals is going to be there for sure, and I'm going to say Lockie McHugh.
Oh, I forgot about Lockie.
But as I said, I don't blame you for forgetting anyone because it's wide open. It's very wide open. You can catch the racing on pay-per-view. I'm not quite sure for the times for that right now, but I'm guessing it'll probably be about 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time over there. So something like that on Friday and Saturday. So, but if you can tune in and watch that, I guarantee it. It'll be some of the best racing you'll ever see. The Motorplex is one hell of a place.
Well, we're anxious to see it. Might be able to do that. The weather's not looking good for the Dirt Car Nationals on Saturday, so people might stay up and sleep. Yeah, it is a shame, but they're adjusting the schedule accordingly. So it's Clay per view. I guess you said it was.
Yep, Clay per view.
Yep, that it's on. We look forward to seeing that, and we'll be back next week where we recap the Australian Championship. with Sheldon Hart.
All right. Thank you.
All right, stay tuned.